A KTP is actually a knowledge transfer partnership, which is a partnership between an education establishment, a business and the government. And it's a three-way partnership involving transfer of knowledge from the education institution to the business. A KTP starts with normally an inquiry either from the business or sometimes a lecturer talks to a student and sees that there's a potential KTP. And normally what happens is a tutor and the future knowledge-based supervisor will go for a meeting with the employer and thrash out what actually is going to be in that project. It must be a specific project that the person can work on for the period of time. And then once they've had the discussion, we produce a bid and pass it past a KTP advisor who will tweak it slightly to make sure that it fits the funding arrangements for the government. There are a lot of people involved. Within the education institution, there's an academic supervisor who's normally generally the head of the department that the academic comes from. There's a knowledge base supervisor who is normally the tutor who's involved in the delivery of those kind of courses. Within the company, there is also a company supervisor who is the day-to-day manager of the associate while they're working in the business, and there's normally the managing director of the company is also involved as well. And then we have an associate who is employed by the education establishment and works full-time at the business doing the project. The associate is normally, or has to be, a recent graduate. Now, when they say graduate, they don't necessarily mean a degree. It could be from level 4 upwards, so somebody with an HND kind of qualification would also be suitable. And they normally have to have qualified within the last 4 or 5 years, so they're fairly fresh with their knowledge. The kind of work that they're involved in depends on obviously the business they're working with and also the knowledge-based supervisor. For instance, we've done a marketing KTP where the associate was charged with actually changing the marketing of the organisation. We've also done quality KTPs where the associate actually put in ISO 9000 certification for the business. Traditionally, KTPs have been aimed at universities, but there's good reasons why FE colleges should be involved. The rules say that the knowledge must be transferred at level 4 and above, which is HNC, HND level, and obviously a lot of colleges are offering information training at that level. But also, a lot of the stuff that the FE colleges do tends to be the more practical day-to-day help that businesses need, whereas the university tends to be cutting-edge stuff. So for smaller businesses, a KTP with an FE college is probably a better bet for them. The typical budget for a KTP is about £54,000 a year. The company pays a proportion of that, and it depends on the size of the company, it depends on what proportion they pay, and the government will top up the rest with a grant. For a larger business it's 50%, and for a smaller business the subsidy is 60% of that cost. The £54,000 includes about £24,000 for the pay for the associate, which, if you include employers' national insurance and things like that, comes out to about £21,000, which isn't a bad wage for a recent graduate. Most people don't actually pay that £21,000. They'll pay them about £20,000 and pay them a bonus at the end of about £1,000, just as a thank you for the work or whatever. The budget also includes £3,000 for training for the associate, of which £1,500 can be used to send them on a course within the college. So you get some of that money back. But for instance, if you wanted to send them on a quality course or something like that, that's included in there. There's also a budget for equipment, so a laptop, computer, software, printers and things like that. Plus there's also a travelling budget for the associate and for the knowledge-based supervisor to travel backwards and forwards to the organisation. The budget also pays to buy the time of the knowledge-based supervisor, and within our college we essentially allocate a 0.25 contract, which works out at about 4 hours a week for the period of over a year. Plus there's also some administrative and overhead recovery costs, which is about the same amount again. It comes out at about £20,000, which comes into the college for that. Organisational issues can be quite a barrier at times because the KTP isn't a normal way of running things. They're employed by the college but actually really employed by the partnership, and most of the decisions are made by the partnership. One of the problems you have therefore is that there's a hybrid contract, which is not a college contract but also not the employer's contract. And things like holidays can cause a problem. Most colleges have longer holidays than private institutions, but you have to fit their holidays. Working hours are the company's working hours, not the college's. Terms and conditions are a hybrid between the college terms and the business terms. But there's also other issues with things like appraisals. A college lecturer wouldn't normally do an appraisal for anybody else, whereas they are, strictly speaking, have to do the appraisal for the associate. And expenses and software and computer systems all tend to say you've got to do the college system, but because they're working in an employer, you tend to end up with a computer that they want, not the standard one that the IT people. And it's little niggly things like that, but as long as you're aware with them when you start, then there's a wherewithal to actually solve the problems. It then becomes easier with the following ones.